tries to silence critics who are asking where the money he raised for vets actually went. Tonight we'll tell you if he succeeded. Then Hillary Clinton, she is heading to California as she hopes that Bernie Sanders burns out. But he's certainly not throwing in the towel, and he keeps riling things up as he officially overplayed his hand. Also, more and more talk of a third-party candidate emerging. But who would it help more, Trump or Hillary? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A lot of politics to talk about in the next 60 minutes. Trump, he is getting vetted for the money that he is giving to vets. Now, remember when he skipped that Fox News debate and instead giving a fundraiser for veterans? Well, ever since then, he's been elusive about where the money actually went. But he's continued to say that he raised about $6 million. Well, today, he tried to put the critics to rest.
I have never received such bad publicity for doing such a good job. So I will give you the names if that's what you want, right? Okay, are you ready? I brought them here. It takes because you have to vet each company. You know, much of this money was paid out very early, but you have to vet all of these different groups because these are many different groups. You have to go through a process.
And Mr. Trump also spent a lot of time slamming the very people he's relied on to get to where he is right now, none other than the media. Here's a sample.
I really think the press, look, the media, you know my opinion of the media, it's very low. I think the media is, frankly, made up of people that, in many cases, not in all cases, are not good people.
Not good people. All right. Hold on to yourselves, guys. All right, now you would think that Trump would have a lot of work to do when it comes to winning over the veterans. He received 4 college deferments to avoid going to Vietnam. But after he graduated, he was eligible, and that's when he was medically disqualified. And here's how the Washington Post describes it. Quote, Trump has given limited information about the nature of his medical ailment from 1968 that left him unqualified for duty. But during a campaign stop in Iowa, Trump said he had a bone spur in his foot, but he couldn't recall which foot it actually was. Now, don't forget what the Donald had to say about John McCain, the Arizona senator, as you probably well know, a decorated war hero, and he was a prisoner of war. Trump said McCain's not a war hero in his eyes because he was captured. But that, just like everything else about Trump, didn't really seem to stick. Now, let's bring in our panel right now. Jessica Proud, a Republican strategist and PR expert with the November team. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Scott Vanderhoff, former 5-term Republican Rockland County exec and co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. You know, Teflon Andrew gets thrown around a lot. It's amazing. Now, I remember the night that Trump when pressed about McCain, says, I don't really think he's a real hero. Heroes in my book don't get captured. People were screaming about that. Somehow, some way, he gets cheers when he goes to, a veteran event this weekend, and he has the nerve to complain that the crowd's not as big as he wanted because he wanted to be like Dr. King's when he had the I Had a Dream speech. You cannot make any of this up if I tried. That said, if there was one constituency, given everything I laid out, that you would think he'd struggle with, it was vets. I don't know if we have a clear answer as to whether or not he answered the questions that have dogged him as to the money he raised, whether or not he'd given it to vets, but the numbers were as little as $1 million had actually shown up in their coffers.
Yeah, I don't know if today's press conference is going to move the needle for a lot of people. If you like Trump, you're going to say, well, look, he raised $5.5 million. Like he said he did, and look at how generous he is, and he organized all of this fundraising. If you're a critic of Trump, you're going to say, yes, but he was lying about everything else, including the fact that the day after that fundraiser, he said, I raised $6 million. Today, he's raised $5.6 million. He hasn't raised the money that he thought he did. The whole thing about vetting the agencies, like the Bob Woodruff Foundation and the YMCA, I think those have been fairly well vetted. And yet they didn't get the money until recently, so he was lying about that.
And most importantly, the only reason he actually went and followed up with this because of media pressure at the time.
He certainly got media pressure last week, and that's what began this process. I don't know yet from the information that we have as to whether he had actually given that money over before the media started asking questions. But this just stirs into the Trump drink, and it doesn't seem like it's pretty much the same thing that we've heard before, and I think his supporters and his detractors are going to view it that way.
Scott, do you think he came out relatively unscathed out of the McCain thing because people had issues with McCain? If it was somebody else, would he have gotten more heat? I mean, the audacity for somebody. And I'm not even making a judgment if someone went or didn't go to Vietnam. I don't think that's a disqualifier if you want to be commander-in-chief that you didn't wear a uniform. However, to demean someone's service that sat in a POW camp that could have left, and if he just basically condemned the mission and abandoned troops, and he refused to do that and was tortured by the Viet Cong, for him to turn around and insult his military service and not consider him a hero because he was captured when he was sitting with all his deferments, to me it's stunning, especially in conservative circles, that wasn't, if not a disqualifier, a huge issue. He never really answered, and he still hasn't apologized to John McCain.
No, he hasn't, and John McCain's supporting him. I mean, how do you do that? Look, this guy is a fraud. He's an absolute fraud. But this press conference wasn't about the veterans agencies. It was about the media. And to an extent, you have to say, wait a minute, he's not entirely wrong there. I mean, he did give $6 million away. I mean, theoretically, if you looked at the list, one was $1 million to the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Group. I mean, he's saying, why don't you make that positive news, okay? To make it a press conference about the media, which is what he did, all the media is talking about it. So he wins again.
Yep.
But in terms of McCain, I think it's abhorrent. And for anybody all of us who thought the Vietnam War was so difficult and had political ramifications and opposed it, for those who served and never got credit, and for those who were imprisoned and tortured and should have gotten more credit, I mean, how could this man come out and say that? Having said all that,
And he wants to be the commander-in-chief.
but there's a New York Times article today. He lost a lawsuit. He loses lawsuits on business matters, the thing that he's supposed to be great at. So I think let's talk about his loss, as opposed to others. He talked about that reporter today, went after him in a way that you don't see, and he's despicable in many ways, I think.
And yet, today's event, I think, will be spun as free press. He'll be in every newscast. And at the end of the day, I don't know he's going to be harmed for this as much as somebody who's a low information voter will only hear that at the end of the day he gave money to veterans clinics. Now, to me, the reason why it became a story was people started saying, we haven't seen any money. And then after being pressed, well, where's the money? Then all of a sudden, he actually made the phone calls. He followed up to see if the checks got raised and gave it. And now he's the victim tonight. But nonetheless, it's amazing how this works, isn't it? Or by now, should we have known this would have been, basically 101?
It's kind of par for the course in a lot of ways. I mean, look, the press has every right to ask the question about where the money went. That's doing their job. And he bristles at that because he's not used to being challenged by a political press corps. In the entertainment world, the press corps is a lot different. So this is a bit of a new experience for him. But to that end, to echo your point, Scott, he is very good at it. He masters the news cycle. You see it time and time again. And now he's sitting there. All he's doing is reinforcing the fact that he had this event for veterans. He's talking about how much he cares about veterans. And he can beat up on the press, which the base loves. And so many people are looking at this like you've seen it backfire with the Times and the story about the women where they came out, and now he can come out today and say, look, they're getting the money. Some of it's still coming in, but they're getting the money. It's taking a little bit time, and it kind of allows him to just continue to beat up on them and expose them for having a media bias.
The counter, though, is, Jess, that yes, and the base loved him going after the Fourth Estate. But to that undecided voter out there, the story was he had to answer questions that he didn't follow through for veterans. So there's one thing with giving red meat to the base, but then what did they get this weekend? If you were they were reminded of the fact of what he said about a POW. Right. Well, it was part of the story.
Right, but he's kind of a walking contradiction in some of those ways. He says that about John McCain, but he's actually the only candidate that was out there bringing all of these issues to light about veterans, saying we're going to make our military great again, we're going to reinvest in them, we're going to take care of our veterans.
Without any specifics.
It doesn't matter.
Not
He
us
is the
until-
only one that speaks that way to them, and that's why he's gotten a lot of their support. He's talking to them in a way that other candidates haven't in the past. So, you know, people I think have been willing to forgive some of the the crazy comments he's made because overall they feel like he'll be better for them.
I don't know. Maybe Dom. Who knows anymore? But to me, when you hear the military stuff, people say more and more I've gotten this weekend, you know, the foreign policy stuff for him scares the heck out of me. The commander-in-chief part of it scares the heck out of me. Him making any military decisions, forget about the foot that he can't remember which one he hurt to get out and what he's saying about others. The judgment issue scares the heck out of people, even people who love a good show.
Well, Richard, not based on the poll that was released today, where he's inching up again on Hillary Clinton, only down 2% within the margin of error. I agree, County Exec. He is a total fraud, a total con man. But boy, he's got game. He's got game that he's selling to the American people. And Richard, sooner or later, my colleagues of the Fourth Estate are going to get it. I don't really want to talk about this veteran stuff. They got me, you know, I got to get this money out real quick because the media, Washington Post is on my back. So what do? I need a diversion, a smokescreen. Attack the reporters. They're going to focus on that immediately. And as Jessica said, and Andrew, that becomes the news cycle. And you got to point out that he did give $5.5 million, raise, you know, $1 million of his own for charity. It's a con man. It is a game. But it's a winning game.
And
it's a game that may carry him all the way to the
right.
White House.
One thing I thought of is, if all of a sudden he's got to have a press conference to show basically where the money went, how about showing us the returns? If you're going to do one, how about showing those tax returns? I would pay huge money to be able to look through those returns.
That's
I
part
have
of
a
his
feeling
game, Richard.
there'll be 5 drop jaws at this
Part
table
of
if
his
we actually
game,
saw it.
that he never apologizes and he doesn't give in to the media. That's part of Trump 101.
All right.
But it also, it's a way to intimidate. He wants to intimidate reporters. He wants to intimidate
done it.
enemies.
he's done it.
And that's how he does it.
I don't know if reporters are afraid of him.
He's also the only candidate that's been allowed to speak directly to voters outside the lens of the media, which Republicans have consistently been frustrated about the media bias. And he is, through social media and other means, has spoken directly to them.
And also, let's be clear, the TV cameras giving him more free time than anyone I've ever met,
He's
like
a
I
product
just did
of
right
the
here.
Media, but
All right.
it's been very effective.
Let's go to the other side of the aisle and the other side of the break. Hillary is California dreamer, hoping, believe it or not, that she can finally put Bernie Sanders away in next week's California primary. But will Sanders continue to haunt her? We'll discuss after this.